Welcome to the Sounds of Encouragement, the place for musicians and music teachers to find support and encouragement to help you stay motivated, creative, and moving forward in what you do best. I'm Melissa Slocum, your host and #1 encourager. I currently live in the Atlanta, Georgia area and have my own thriving studio teaching piano to all ages in person and online. I also help other teachers use student goal-based learning and differentiated instruction to increase motivation in their students and increase retention rates in their studios. You can learn more at www.musiclessonpathways.com. Thank you for tuning in to Sounds of Encouragement. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified of future episodes. Enjoy the following episode. Don't forget to keep listening at the end, and be sure to check out all the links in the comments or show notes. As always, I'm here for you, so you can be there for those who need you the most. Reach out to me at soundofencouragement@gmail.com and let me know how I can better support and encourage you. Welcome to Season 2 of the podcast, and I have to share a couple of things real quick. 1, I am overwhelmed at the support you all have given this little podcast in the last year. I had no idea this would get so much traction, even though I knew we all needed more connection and encouragement during a global pandemic. Thank you for listening, for sharing the podcast, asking to be on the podcast, asking for ways to support it, and simply encouraging me to keep this going. 2, I do this because creatives and teachers need support. Musicians, music teachers, and all creatives need to be reminded how valued, how amazing, and how essential they are to their communities. We all need you to keep creating, to keep inspiring, to keep teaching, and to keep the arts flourishing in our young people and in our communities. Thank you for what you do. So if you share this vision, or if you are getting any benefit from this podcast, here are some ways you can help me keep it going. 1, just keep listening and keep sharing this podcast with your friends and colleagues. That's easy. 2, keep leaving those positive reviews and subscribing wherever you get your podcast. 3, I don't have sponsors or make money here, but this podcast is part of a larger mission now to bring you even more support, resources, and the things you need to stay inspired and creative. You can help launch that mission by supporting the podcast at buymeacoffee.com/encouragement. That's buymeacoffee.com/encouragement. Every bit of your support goes toward future podcast production and future resources and events. 4, keep referring people to me who inspire you and are encouraging of others, so that I can keep sharing diverse voices with you. Reach out through Facebook, Instagram, or at soundofencouragement@gmail.com. Shirley Wang is an award-winning operatic soprano, pianist, international best-selling author, entrepreneur, host, expert instructor, music arranger, illustrator, and children's Chinese curriculum creator. As a musician, she has performed across the United States, including the Carnegie Hall. In 2020, she started an interview series, Tuesday Conversation with Friends, featuring performing artists, composers, writers, dancers, actors, directors, and others who make the world more colorful. It is rapidly gaining viewership and critical acclaim. You can find it on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and as a podcast on all major podcast platforms. In addition, she founded Simple Gifts Music Studio, which offers online voice, piano, music theory, performance technique, diction, and Chinese cultural language program. A native of Taipei, Taiwan, Shirley Wang is a graduate of the University of Southern California. She was a finalist for the International Opera Singers Competition of Chinese Heritage and was a soloist in the Chinese Rising Stars concert at the Carnegie Hall. As a lyric soprano, Ms. Wang has performed with opera companies and symphonies throughout the United States with major leading roles. As a recitalist, Ms. Wang has been heard in California, Washington, Idaho, Boston, Long Island, and Florida. Notably, since 2016, she has created over 30 multimedia storytelling-based concerts in Central Florida and in New York City. Please welcome my guest, Shirley Wang. Welcome to Sounds of Encouragement, and welcome to my friend Shirley. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's such an honor to be here, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. You heard a little bit about Shirley from the bio, but this conversation is all about encouragement. And I know that the music that you're going to hear later, and I know that what we talk about today is going to be so uplifting for you. So, Shirley, you have a podcast, and you've also done a lot on Clubhouse. And we met each other, I think, just online in the different
Right.
various things that we both do online socially and on Clubhouse about a year ago. And I just love the podcast that you were doing and
Oh,
all the things that you were putting out there and the way that you support
thank
other
you.
musicians and artists.
Hmm.
It's just so beautiful to see so much support and so many great things happening. So
Thank you.
before we talk about like what you're doing, I want to kind of go back in history, back in time a little bit
Sure.
and talk about who were your encouragers early on, or who were the people in your life that maybe stepped in at a pivotal moment or were be able to create a pivot point for you in your life by their encouragement.
My parents had a lot of influence on me. They were one of the very, for Chinese parents, they were very unusual. They're very liberal.
Ah,
And if I didn't want to practice, they would never make me. When I was 4.5, I started the piano lessons because I wanted to. They bought me a piano and I was hitting little tunes. I was singing out of there by myself. They said, well, better get this girl some lessons.
ah,
And they brought in this lady who come to the house 3 times a week. But she would take a
oh,
pencil and she would hit my little hand.
oh,
And my parents never hit me. I don't think it was okay. So one day after the lesson, I was a little tiny little thing who was just about the height of the piano keyboard. I
right.
stood up to her and I said, Miss Lee, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for teaching me, but you don't have to come back anymore.
Wow. That's
I fired my
huge.
first piano teacher.
Wow.
Yes, and my mom saw this, and this happened in the home. So she decided I definitely had the interest and the passion for the music ever since tiny,
Right.
but this was not the right teacher for me. And so it set up the path I later on took on in life as a musician. Is when I discovered the traditional career was not the dynamic that made me happy. It
Mm,
defeated my purpose of wanting to make music. I did later on make similar decisions as I look back, you know?
wow.
So, yeah, so I think having parents are not perfect. And their approach did hinder me at some point because I think children need help to organize their time, to be motivated, to be disciplined, to practice enough,
Sure.
and I think kids are less frustrated when they can do well, and that comes back to the practice. And my parents didn't do any of that because they were so
Mm,
liberal.
sure.
But on the other hand, further down the road, it really made a huge difference for me.
It sounds like they really created freedom and space for you to explore rather than being demanding about the outcome or what you were expected to be able to do as a result of taking lessons.
Right. It was really about love. And I think that's really important. And I do wish they have combined that with more discipline.
Mm.
So, and I think that balance can be struck. And I think as an educator, that's something that I always strive to do.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. So, how has that influenced your teaching?
I think as an educator, it's really important I maintain my passion and my love for music. And I'm always taking lessons. And because if I am not passionate and motivated and inspired, it shows. And to me, that gives me the space to inspire the kids and the parents to become disciplined in their own practice because they have something to look forward to.
What a profound statement, really, for the time that we're in, too. A lot of musicians and music educators have been feeling quite empty, and it has been a hard time. We'll talk more about that
Yes,
later, but I
yes.
love that idea of staying close to your craft, staying inspired, continuing to learn, and continuing to open up. And what a
Yes.
great message of encouragement, not only from your past, but to pass along to those who work with you and who are around you.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, I've seen it just, on social media, how you encourage and uplift and kind of you're, I love how you just kind of incorporate everybody and say, no, come on in, let's do this. Let's, whatever. And just, it's not about you. It's about
No,
moving music forward. And I love that.
absolutely. I recently read a quote. What I do for myself, I do it for the other. And that expands to all of the other, which means everyone, right? So,
Yes.
so then when you turn around, it's also when you do something for another, you're also doing it for yourself.
Yes. Absolutely. What a great mantra sort of to live by, right? Yeah. When you think about encouragement versus expectation, this is a tricky line sometimes for people to walk. Sometimes people encourage us, but we learn later on or at some point that really it was just them putting expectations on us. How have you been able to navigate the difference between or discern the difference between someone else's expectation of you versus their encouragement for you?
I have an example of
Mm.
someone who was just really a great encourager. Bill Yanuzzi was my vocal coach, and he was the music director on the Rosa Poncel for 40 some years, and he actually died in the opera house.
Oh
It's
my
an
goodness.
incredible story. And I remember the first time I worked with him in a music festival in Central California. And he was so frustrated with all the singers, and he says, "You have real talent, and you need to stick with me." And I was like, "Oh." So that kind of straddles that line you're describing.
Yeah.
But he took out a lot of personal time, and he offered me not only his mentorship, but his friendship. And he came and stayed with my parents and ate my grandmother's cooking so he could give me a huge amount of coaching and encouragement. And he said, "Shirley, you have to understand the difference between you and the great is not that much.
Wow.
The difference is, are you going to do what you need to do to become one of the greats?" But he didn't just say those with words. He helped me to find teachers across the
Right.
country, to find places to stay so I can become better. And I
Right.
think expectation sometimes comes with something that's gratifying for them more than it is gratifying for the other person.
Mm.
And somebody who's encouraging, they they care about you. They invest in you, and you can feel the sincerity. And we always have a choice if we're going to step into it.
Yeah.
And but I think expectation sometimes doesn't feel like there's a choice.
Mm. What a great perspective and point to draw out is that oftentimes expectation comes with something that the other person is looking to get out of it. And
Right.
I think that's sometimes very difficult to see for people or to think about. Yeah.
I think sometimes I wish I had a little bit more parental guidelines and just people who are older than me to
Mm.
help me navigate through some of those waters, because I think that is so incredibly tricky. And especially you have a young, talented students, and it's a difficult to navigate place. I recently watched an interview with Gary Graffman, who is Yu Wang and Lang Lang's teacher.
Okay.
And he did mention in order to have a career as a concert pianist, you have to identify the talent early and start working with it early. And I think that is difficult. It's difficult to have that kind of mentorship and identification early. And I would love to be a better pianist. I'm a decent pianist, but by no means a concert pianist compared to some of my friends who are truly, I mean, they're playing on international concert
Yeah.
stages with major orchestras.
Yeah.
And but if my parents had realized earlier what kind of training I would have needed, it would have been a different picture. But I would have never discovered my singing voice. However,
Sure. Sure. But I think you bring up some really critical things about that difference that you need someone, who's going to step with you and not just push you forward towards something,
right,
but who's going to walk with you and give you the tools that
right.
you need to
Yes.
continue that journey. Yeah. Wow. Important distinctions. So if for those of you who are struggling with that whole idea of what do I do? And I think this is especially true, don't you, when we're younger, we're in our 20s, maybe college age, and we're still kind of figuring out who we are and trying to navigate.
I think it is. And I think it is important to find mentors in our lives who actually understand the business, whether it's the business of performing, business of teaching, and help you to make decisions that actually moves you towards your goals. But I think to me, it's not just when you're a teen, when you're in your 20s. I think that journey continues. I think in every stage as a teacher and as a performer, especially as a performer, but I think as a teacher too, especially during the pandemic, I think we recognize we don't really always know where we're going, and we need that encouragement and hopefully some guidance. But that comes a little bit harder when you're a little bit more mature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We could spend such a long time talking about this.
Right.
But I love your perspective. When you think about what we have been through in a global pandemic, some people have really, wow, it's been destructive to some careers, to some studios. It's been a lot for people to try to, navigate through. What has kept you hopeful and positive and encouraged and moving forward? You have done just some really wonderful, made some wonderful changes and kept moving
Yeah.
forward. How did you do that?
Inspiration has always been my propelling force. And isolation for a musician could be an incredible well of inspiration to draw from. I don't remember the last time I had this much time to just marinate myself with my music studies, except when I was still in music school. And it kind of ties back to what we talked about earlier, that continuous learning and studying and working on your own craft. I practiced and studied music for 6 to 10 hours a day for almost a year that I haven't had luxury for. And the very deliberate and intentional connections with other musicians who are interested in being inspired, and other musicians who are truly excellent and just incredible in what they do. And I think that helped me. And it's exciting for me to get to know them. It was also exciting to give back through the podcast and sharing what they do as well, because I think when you give, you're so much more motivated and inspired, just like you do. I love what you do.
Thank you. Wow, what a great reminder, I think, for all of us, that sometimes people don't have a choice. They still have to continue to show up and do what they do.
Yes.
But on some level, we also, I think, have to go inward a little bit and shut out the noise and shut out what everyone else is doing and all the stuff that's going on, and go back to, who am I? What is my craft? What is inspiring me? What can I listen to? What can I play? What can I be a part of?
Right.
That will continue to sort of help me process. And sometimes that process isn't always wonderful. It can be very hard too. But that's such an important part, I think, of that evolution of getting through such a difficult period of time.
I did employ a different practice, a practice for practicing, which is kind of funny sounding during this time. I think that helped, which is much more deliberate and much more focused and in setting goals for my practice. And also I use timers. I stopped every 15 to 20 minutes. So every moment of practice and study was fresh, and I charted. I started a practice journal during this time. All the things we tell students to do,
Yeah. So how did that change your actual feeling about practice, or your feeling about reaching those goals then?
they become reachable. They become, I think, after all those years of teaching, this was really helpful because I think I can see that when I was a young student, I always doubted. Somewhere in my mind, somewhere inside of me, I doubted if I do this, is it really going to be that as a result? But after all those years of teaching, I am aware if you do this, it will be that. So there is a serenity and peace that anxiety is worked away throughout those years of teaching. And so when I'm practicing, I have the sense of trust. I trust the process. And I have very clearly defined goals, but I trust the process. And that somehow kept me really become more and more motivated as the pandemic continued. And it's exciting because now I have 8 concerts already booked for 2022. And so I'm excited about that and more are coming. And I feel like a different performer because of the time spent.
That's so interesting that you mentioned a practice journal because last fall, I started a practice journal too. I was really pushing my students because, I had some in person, I had mostly online. And we talked about switching from a time-oriented practice session to a goal-oriented practice session. And I did that too with them, kind of right alongside. Yeah. And it was so refreshing. I hadn't done that in quite a few years. And it was so refreshing because one of the things that I learned was, well, 2 things. Accomplishing a goal in my practice time with a piece often took far less time than I thought it would. So, if my goal was to, perfect a certain section rhythmically, usually that didn't take very long, or it didn't take as long as I thought it would.
Right.
And then the other thing that happened is I sometimes would not meet all of my goals in a practice session. So I'd have this section I really still can't get through at tempo, but look at all the other goals I did meet during this practice session. Right. And then I could still walk away going, okay, well, that's okay. And then I was able to share that with students. Did you have similar, you're nodding and saying yes, you must have had similar experiences.
We're perfectionists if we're musicians. That's just built in. And I know everybody talks about how do we not be perfectionists, it's damaging, all that stuff. But the truth is, if you're not a perfectionist, you're not going to be a very good musician. And but perfection is not quantifiable or measurable.
Right.
So what you just mentioned to me helps me, and it sounds like it helps you as well, to make this whole thing measurable and quantifiable and tangible. And I think that keeps us going. I recently discovered an interesting little tool online. It's called Pocket Conservatory. And I went to hear Ray Chan perform at the Hollywood Bowl. He played the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. It was incredible.
Okay.
Yes. And he is one of the people who is on Pocket Conservatory. You can go in, open up a studio and practice. You can set it either as a private studio or a public studio. It's a little nerve-wracking in some ways, but it requires you to truly focus because people can come in and listen to you practice.
Wow.
But they know it's work in progress. And you can upload what they call pockets, which is your work in progress as well. But I found that when I log in and open a public practice studio, I am really, really focused during my practice. And it really, really makes a huge difference. There are times when it should be private, but there are times I think having that extra sense of I gotta focus, I have to deliver, my practice has to be mindful, and that really, it's interesting because you can see, I could see the psyche change in me,
Yeah, and what a great tool to use for preparation for performance too. I will be checking that out because just this last fall, I was, I think just a lot of things have thrown me for a loop in the last few months. And so I came back and I was not motivated to practice as much this last fall. And I said to a group, I said, I need accountability. And so I got invited to join a practice group on Facebook, and I'm like, yay. So again, I don't practice as much as I feel like I should with that group, but again, you can post videos and just, share your practice time. And that is,
Right.
I agree with you, being like on. Now that's not a live thing. I suppose maybe it could be, but I think Pocket Conservatory is something I need to check out.
I think it's great, and people of all different levels, and they log in, and still mostly classical,
Yeah.
and but it's really interesting because you log in the app and it's live, and you also have lessons you can take for certain instruments. They don't have anything for vocal, but they have for string and sometimes for piano. So it's very interesting, and but it's just you have a practice. It tracks how long you practice. If you skipped a day, you lose your streak. But it tells you how many days you practice total, even if you lose your streak. And it's interesting. I think it takes a particular type of personality to want to do it, but I'm just crazy enough to do it.
Well, and I thank you for sharing that, because I think myself and probably a lot of people listening are crazy enough to do that, because I feel like I need that discipline too, because it's so easy for me to get so busy with all the other stuff, right? And to just let the practicing kind of like, I can finish it,
Fall
I
to the
can do
wayside.
it. Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing I think that's kind of a byproduct of this pandemic is a lot of people are uploading their work, right? They're either live streaming, or I'm not brave enough to live stream because I'm such a perfectionist. I want to record it for 36 times before I upload 30 seconds. And but because it's there in perpetuity. And with Pocket Conservatory, nothing is recorded. It's like Clubhouse. Once you do it, it's gone. So it really allows you to stay with the process.
And I love that, because I think for those who may have some anxiety about exactly that issue, about things living in perpetuity, what a great tool to be able to do that. I quite often tell my students when they're working on something, use your phone to record and then go back and listen to the playback to kind of evaluate your own,
Yes.
and then do it again like 3 days later or 2 days later and view
Right.
that and compare the two and see what progress you've made. And I've done that too, but it's just me, I'm not putting it out there on social for other people to comment on. But yeah,
Very much so.
yeah, valuable tool and way to use technology. So I so appreciate you sharing that. For those who are listening or watching this particular interview, who might have gone through, some really hard things, and I know we've all gone through some hard things. What encouragement do you want to share with those folks?
I think just don't give up, because everything is temporary. Our whole life is temporary. Whatever we experience right now is temporary. Just don't give up. And I just had a similar conversation with a friend of mine. And I shared with her, I said, some of my students who do the best are not the ones who started with the most talent, but the ones somehow they don't give up. They keep going. And after 10 years of lessons, they play better than the students who started with more talents because they didn't stop.
Yeah. I love that. I've had some similar conversations. Wow. And I think it is very easy as a music teacher and as a musician right now to do exactly that, to give up and say, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Yeah. And I would add to that, not only don't give up, but reach out to some of the communities, right, that we've been able to benefit from for support.
I think also being open to changes. You don't have to do things the same way always. It's okay to have changes in life, and it's okay to make different decisions, but it's important to identify what we want and figure out a way to preserve it.
Yeah, I have so many really cool thoughts around that whole idea of change and flux. I just listened to a different podcast about pandemic flux and how can we change our mindset to adapt, sort of, to this idea of almost constant change and almost constant uncertainty. And I'm working on that because I feel like if we can do that a little bit at least, and if we can model how we handle everything, with our students, then it gives them a little more peace, a little more calm, or it gives the people around us a sense of, oh no, it's okay. Everything is changing, but we're going to be okay.
Right. And I even think there is a sense of excitement for the changes. Back in the days, anytime when anyone played with an orchestra, it was televised. And if it's a big orchestra, it's televised more often. It's a small orchestra, it's televised, but it's just less frequent because not as many performances.
Right.
And then the media took over, and the interests, shifted. And it was next to impossible to have publicity unless you have management who are pumping money and investing into you. And you just have to be not only good, but lucky. Yeah. But during the pandemic, that has completely shifted. And before the pandemic, it was the younger musicians of specific genre who took advantage of the social media, who took advantage of YouTube and all those stuff. But now the more mature musicians who truly have a lot to offer, who the management may consider to be less viable as products, not because they don't sell tickets, but because I don't know how many people understand this. When managers look to sign, the reason why they want to sign and push young talents, it's not because they think the young talents sell more, but it's because young talents can sell longer. They pump a lot of money and effort into cultivating the talents they sign, and they want to make money off the person for 30, 40 years before they burn out. If you're in your 30s, in your 40s, you're incredible. Not because they don't see your value or that you cannot sell tickets, but they can only make money off you for 10 years.
Exactly.
For 20 years. So now we have, during the pandemic, we have completely broken that bureaucracy, that system. And we're actually able to reach people directly. We're able to reach the hiring managers directly. We're able to reach the audience directly. So the changes are actually great.
I agree. And, if you are struggling as a musician or as a composer or as, just anything, getting your stuff out there, I agree with you. There are channels now that have opened up, and there are groups that can help you. There are people that can help you. We're forging, a whole new way in all sorts of different industries. But I think creatives have really, really led this. And, that's the one thing that I can say I am really proud of in terms of being a part of, the music teaching industry and the music industry. I'm really proud of creatives for just kind of pushing those boundaries and leading the way.
Or like what you're doing with a podcast.
Well, and, I'm hoping that, a few people will be encouraged, but I guess that's the beauty of being able to connect with Zoom. I know everybody's sort of like, oh, I'm so tired of Zoom. I get it.
I love it.
Without
connecting with people all over the world.
Exactly. Without it, we wouldn't hear half of the podcasts that we hear, frankly, because most of them are done by Zoom or some other platform similar. And we just wouldn't be able to reach out and connect with the people the same way.
That's right.
Wow. What a great so many opportunities for encouragement in this conversation. We have to get to the music, and I love the musical choices that you've made. So we're just going to play a little tiny clip of each one, but each piece will be a direct link in the show notes. So I encourage everybody to go to the show notes and click on the links. I'm going to share screen. We're going to hear this first piece, and wow, Chopin, Fantasy Impromptu in C sharp minor, opus 66. We're going to start this at the main theme. Here we go. Oh, I hate to stop that, but talk a little bit about this one and why this is encouraging for you.
I was a very small child when I first heard this piece. I was probably younger than 5. And I became obsessed with it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love for that sound for I didn't understand it, but it didn't matter. And I think it shows people children's capacity to fall in love with something they may or may not understand.
Yeah. And, I'm a firm believer in music as language. So, music from the time we're in the womb, I think, is language and can have deep influence on us. So the second piece that you wanted to share, and I love this one too, and let me cue this because for some reason YouTube is not being friendly to me today, so I'm going to re-cue these as we go. So if you hear a few things that are kind of in the wrong spot or whatever before I share the screen, we'll just say that's the joy of technology. Things are running a little slow on my end. All right, so here is the Sarasate, the Carmen Fantasy, and this is the famous section, the habanera, and this, oh my goodness, Hilary Hahn, just enjoy this little bit, but go listen to the whole thing. Here we go. That's the familiar part that everyone knows and loves, but go listen to the whole thing. It's so fabulous.
The habanera.
Yes. Talk to us about that one.
When I was a very little child, again, my dad and his older brother were audiophiles. They would play this on vinyl records, not by Hilary Hahn because she wasn't alive yet, but yes, and but it was just such fond memory to me. This was fun music, and nothing was terribly explained to me, but it was just fun music. So I think we must understand it's not a programming, it's not a selection of the music. It is the context that we have in life. So of course, it made me fall in love with symphonic music and operas, which later on became my profession. So
yes. And do you have other memories associated with when they would play this? Like what was happening during that? Like would they be doing other things? Were you? No.
We sit down and listened.
Okay. So they really wanted to immerse themselves and you in the music.
Even now, I'm staying with my parents to help them out at this time because there's some health issues. This morning, I got up like a crazy person. I started vocalizing because I want to feel where my voice was.
Right,
and the next thing I know is I heard my dad started practicing guitar from his room because,
Okay.
Or sometimes we'll all sit down, the house would be dead silent because all three of us are reading and learning something.
Sure.
And I think that environment is important.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so interesting too because everyone is so different, and I think music has such incredible power in our lives. We can listen in our vehicles when we're going to and from different places. Sometimes it's background music when we're eating dinner. Sometimes it's collaborative when we're with friends and we're playing together. And sometimes it's that I just need to sit and listen and really hear and try to understand what's happening and let it really pull you in. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. This next piece that we're going to share is Ravel. And you had shared a little bit about this with me prior about the Mother Goose Suite and when this came into your life. So let me play a little bit of this and then we'll talk.
Sure.
Oh, I want to play everything.
I know, right?
But this is so
it's such
sweet.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yes.
This brings back memories of first love because my first serious boyfriend was assigned to me as my piano partner for piano ensemble, and our assignment was the piano four-hand version of the Mother Goose Suite.
Right.
And Pierre Boulez was coming in town to conduct this, which is the very conductor of this link.
Right.
Not the same performance, but the same
Right.
conductor. And he took me to hear it so we can play it better, and a romance started from there.
And how old were you about?
I was 18.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
I
amazing.
was a wee child. Right.
But that's the perfect time, right? Falling in love with music, falling in love with someone else who loves music. Yeah. Oh. And, as you've listened to this now, since you were 18, I'm sure you have fond memories, but is there a movement that you really enjoy?
Beauty and the Beast. I was the beast, and I was chasing after the beauty, and somehow there's a metaphor there somewhere for life. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum.
That's so fabulous because I listened to the whole thing and I was like, oh man, I identify like with all of these at some point,
Right.
in different ways for different points in my life or different reasons in
Right.
life. So yeah, oh, that's really
Yes.
cool. All right, so we're going to move on. And the next piece to share.
Oh my God, I feel cover my face for this one.
No. So go listen to the whole thing. The link is in the show notes. And this is Shirley with her beautiful voice singing the Tu 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 from Madame Butterfly by Puccini. We just can only hear a few seconds. Here we go. I hate to cut that off. Such power.
It's so strange listening to oneself. It's always odd.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes. And this recording was done in one take. And I didn't have any rehearsal with the pianist, and because he was incredible. But it's the aria I sang all the time for auditions for many years. And the goal is you don't have to see the person, but you can hear the emotions and the acting in the voice.
Yeah. So as you reflect on, well, I guess I have two questions about this one. What made you choose this as your audition? Aside from what you just said about being able to, feel the emotion, what else made you choose this particular piece?
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a difficult topic, and we'll keep it very short.
Okay.
And it has a lot to do with the racial stereotypes. And everybody was thrilled to find an Asian soprano who had the right voice for Butterfly. And so it was not so much of an option for me not to do it. And but fortunately, I fell in love with it.
Wow. Wow. So how is that? Wow, what a transformation you've made then to turn that into something that is encouraging and uplifting for you.
When you asked me for 5 pieces that was encouraging and uplifting for me, it was really hard because I fall in love with whatever I'm working with at the time.
Right.
And when you have to work on the piece for so much, you fall in love with the work.
Yeah.
And with the opera, it's the work as a whole work, and the literature, the characterization, the music, just the whole storytelling aspect of how can you not fall in love?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think a lot of people will relate to what you just shared about, how can you not fall in love with something when you've worked on it for so long and so hard and gotten into the character and gotten into the story. And wow, such a powerful journey that you've been on with that.
You become it. So if you don't fall in love with it, there's something about yourself you stop loving. And that is a very dangerous place to be. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. We're not going to talk about that anymore, but we could talk about that for hours. So here's the last piece to share. This is beautiful. I had never heard this before, and I'm so excited that you're sharing this because I hope everybody goes and listens to this. This is short, but wow, the beauty packed in here. Colorful clouds chasing the moon, and this is a traditional folk tune, and we'll let you talk about this afterward. Here we go. Oh my goodness. Go listen to the whole thing.
And the Yundi's playing is so gorgeous anyway. So during the pandemic, of course, we also experienced that anti-Asian hate experience. So I picked up this piano solo, which is very representative of the Chinese culture. This was adapted from a traditional Chinese. It's actually from a particular form of Chinese opera that was in Hong Kong and Canton region. And the very last empress of the Qing dynasty and had this really important person that worked for her. Part of his job was to find things that was of cultural importance and bring it back to the palace, to the Forbidden Palace. And this was a piece of music he brought back. And so it became well known in England, and then they made arrangements for piano as a solo. And during the Cultural Revolution, the artists were very persecuted. And this piece of music have gone through many iterations in order to survive today as piano solo, and it also represents the very early development of Western style classical music in China. Sure. So I took this up as a piano solo to work on, and during the pandemic, both as a personal skills, but also because it had a lot of meaning. And I love it. It's so beautiful. It has because it has such a vocal quality in it.
Yes, and the beginning and the ending, the introduction, just sparkling, beautiful. That's where the color and the chasing really kind of came in, and I loved listening to it. And I'm really thrilled that you were able to share the history of that, because I don't think it's very often that we, unfortunately, are able to find actual history of some of the pieces that we really ought to be teaching, or that are in the repertoire but are quite hidden in some cultures. Wow. So have you had a chance to perform it?
Not exactly yet, but I hope I will. And so I have some concerts coming up. I might put them on the concert if it fits in there. But I think, ironically, I'm choosing concert repertoire that's in Spanish. So go figure. Yes.
Well, I hope you do. Yeah. I hope you can put it in the repertoire, because what great history we need. We need performers and educators and musicians to be teaching and bringing their culture and bringing other cultures in, and teaching us the history. This is part of why I've been so concerned about not just having white European voices uplifted on this particular podcast. I want different cultures and different voices represented. And I so appreciate that you brought this to us. And I know that people are going to listen and feel uplifted just from the music, but I hope also connected to the history now from hearing you talk about it. And maybe consider, how can I incorporate something like this, if not exactly that particular piece, but how can I incorporate more of this in my own repertoire and my own teaching? Thank you.
I believe this could be used as a teacher's choice for RCM. I don't remember which level, but this qualifies.
Okay, we have to track that down.
Yes.
I'll be looking that up later to see if it is. Yes. Because is this where can we find the sheet music for this?
If you just Google it, you can download it very easily. And I believe the RCM out of Canada, and quite a few students have done so in the past. I just don't remember whether it's level 9 or level 10. Yeah, or I think it's somewhere around there. And but it could be approved as a teacher's choice for the listee. So
that would be fabulous. I don't think it's in the level 9. But I will check.
It's not listed on the catalog. It will have to be teacher's choice. Yeah. But it could be approved.
Okay. All right. So teachers, listen up. That would be a great choice. I love that because, I have had students who have been looking for audition pieces, right? For conservatory or music school, for whatever they're looking to do. And I have really been pushing like, no, we can't just do European composers. I know that that's, some schools are actually changing that and now starting to require that you have something that is non-European on your list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this could be a great choice, and I love it. So it's nice to hear it played more often.
Well, I'm going to probably find this myself because I love it. It's just gorgeous. Thank you so much for bringing that. So thank you for your time today. Is there anything else that you would like to share as encouragement for those who've been watching or listening today?
Listen to more episodes of this. I really admire what Melissa does. And I think if you're not watching and listening, you're missing out.
Watching, listening, and learning, right?
Indeed.
Yes. Wow, Shirley, this has been a fabulous hour with you. Thank you so, so much for offering your perspective and your encouragement to everyone out there and this beautiful music that you've shared. And just thank you for, all you continue to do and put out there in the world. It really, truly is encouraging and supportive to so many of us, whether we're musicians or music teachers or both.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I love your work, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, that wraps up another episode of Sounds of Encouragement here. Thank you all so much for watching or for listening to this particular episode. And if you are interested in finding out more about Sounds of Encouragement, you can find more information on all the different platforms or email soundofencouragement@gmail.com. Take care, and until next time, be encouraged. Sounds of Encouragement is hosted, edited, and produced by Melissa Slocum. Music composed by Melissa Slocum and Steve Trussler. Music produced by Steve Trussler. For questions about the show or to get involved or be a guest, email soundofencouragement@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave those positive reviews wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to Steve Trussler and Christina Libriori, who encouraged me to do this. If you have found value in these episodes, please let me know through the comments, reviews, or via email. And if I can do anything to support or encourage you, please reach out and let me know. Thanks for listening.